Previously, we focused on the playable races, but now let's focus on the more freak of nature humanoids. On both sides, we have titan creations from different planets, both similar in size and both insanely powerful. So, who would win in melee combat, an ogre or a VRYKUL? It is 2020 and we are still using giant, bulky and unpractical wallets. Luckily, the sponsor of this video, the Ridge wallet, is offering an excellent alternative. Light, sleek, industrial and simple in an aesthetic way, it can save you a lot of space in your pocket. Ridge wallet can hold up to 12 cards as well as cash, and it comes in over 30 colors and styles, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. The team is so confident that they're offering a lifetime warranty and a test drive for 45 days, meaning if you don't absolutely love it, you can send it back. If you go to ridge.com/Doron, you can get 10% off as well as free worldwide shipping. Check out the link in the description below. Ogres trace their lineage back to Grond, the stone giant created by Agramar on Draenor in order to defeat the Evergrowth. Ogres are one of the most recent results of evolution and they're only a step before the orcs. Because of that, they're quite similar to the orcs in terms of society, strength and intellect. Originally, it was thought that ogres were dumb, me smash you, and could barely form a sentence, but most recently we figured out that they could become quite intelligent and they had a massive empire and were one of the most powerful spellcasters essentially on all of Draenor. Despite the intellect, however, size and strength was and still is the focus of their society. We don't really have exact sources and the size of ogres really varies. At their smallest they can be 6 feet, around 180 centimeters. On average they're about 8 feet tall, around 2.5 meters, and at their biggest height they can be around 12 feet tall, so 3.7 meters. The thing is, we've seen them even larger than that because orcs can be 8 feet and ogres are drastically bigger. Nothing is 100% confirmed, but I'd say 12 feet tall sounds about right for an ogre. In terms of weight, we don't really know, but with their insane builds they could easily weigh half a ton up to a ton, and honestly with the larger ones I doubt they weigh anything less than that. Ogres have a ridiculous build to say the least. It is like the build for melee and very few races could compete with them 1v1. On Draenor, only really their predecessors. They are gigantic in every possible sense. Strong legs, strong arms, strong back, insanely thick neck and a powerful jaw. Additionally, they also possess a singular horn on top of their head, which can be of incredible use if they charge or hit with their head. We don't really know the exact strength numbers obviously because these guys don't really lift weights as far as we know, but they're said to be one of the physically most powerful races. There is an ogre figurine where an ogre overhead presses a cleft hoof, which is just insanity as these beasts weigh like what, a ton or if not tons. It is one thing to deadlift a ton if you're 12 feet tall, but pressing it with your shoulders above your head is just a feat unimaginable for anything close resembling a human. Now, of course, this might be an exaggeration as in their ideal, like how you would have in ancient Greece like an Atlas stone, but if they could even do half of that, it would make them machines of just straight out destruction. If these guys can lift up a cleft hoof over their head, they can easily throw around essentially any playable race, meaning that they could play around with a massive torrent. Much like the orcs, ogres are also a warrior society and they're drastically more brutal than the orcs. Their structure is an extremely primitive dominance hierarchy where the strongest ogre rules and is constantly challenged. This means that their life is essentially an eternal struggle for power and strength is almost everything for an ogre. When it comes to the VRYKUL, they are like the ogre counterparts on Azeroth. Originally Titan forged, they had succumbed to the curse of flesh and are now just gigantic humans. We have, of course, no concrete sources on their height. Some comparisons peg them around 12 feet tall, around 3.7 meters. Cairn says that they're larger than the Tauren, and in-game they're literally look to be around like what, 20 feet tall, as they're definitely bigger than the Tauren, and the in-game is never really representative of the actual lore. I'd put the VRYKUL Vrykul at around 12 to 15 feet in height, so between 3.7 meters to 4.5 meters. In terms of weight, they are massive and must weigh at least half a ton, and they're definitely in the hundreds of kilos, although they're definitely lighter than the ogres just with their build. In terms of their actual body, they have more of a slender build and are much the opposite when compared to the ogres. As opposed to the boulder of muscle that are the ogres, the Vrykul have more of a fighter's build. So the Vrykul would definitely be more agile, able to move quicker, as much as it is allowed for their size. Just like the ogres, the Vrykul are also warrior culture through and through. They're based on Norse cultures and the Spartans and respect strength, size and power. From a young age, babies are discarded if they're weak, at least after the Curse of Flesh, which means that from birth they're fostered the Vrykul to become fearless warriors. So if we were to compare the two, who would win in melee combat, the ogres or the Vrykul? In terms of just raw power and strength, the ogres definitely take the lead. Ogres are like 12 feet tall mountains of muscle. They aren't graceful, they aren't agile, they aren't particularly skillful. In fact, most ogre fighting revolves to just using their size for their advantage. They put on a ton of armor as they can easily carry it. They grab a club and they just go at it. And in most cases, this actually works incredibly well. Of course, ogres also like to often not wear as much armor and as little as possible when fighting, showing off just how resilient they are in combat against most races. Ogres charge and just go with bloodlust to completely destroy you. Now, a million times in the past we had defeated the ogres, but keep in mind we had defeated them with weapons and magic, and those are insane power multipliers, but there aren't many cases where any race really went into melee against an ogre, and I don't even know who would be able to do that from the playable races. You need insane size and just raw power to be able to do anything against an ogre. You need literally like a ton, like a literal ton of weight behind the punch to be able to damage such a large beast with like a gigantic neck. In terms of this, I definitely think the Vrykul do have the size requirements for this. Vrykul are massive, they're most likely taller than the ogres, and they're definitely taller than them on average, and they do have the weight. They might not have the same raw strength and width, and a Vrykul could definitely not wrestle an ogre, but in terms of punching, with their build, they do have the advantage. From what we have seen, Vrykul have long arms, slender build, and this is ideal for punching, dodging, and keeping the distance. On the other side, ogres are kinda awkward. They're like a square, but if they manage to close the distance, they could no doubt pick up a Vrykul, throw him around, and just use their strength to their advantage. Now, I'm not saying Vrykul are an easy opponent in terms of strength, as these guys are like 15 feet tall, but the ogres outclass them here by quite a bit. So, the reality is that the two races are on quite a similar level, different in terms of characteristics, but on the same power tier. An agile Vrykul who was taller than an ogre would have an advantage and could defeat an ogre, but in close quarters, like very close quarters, the ogres win. Ultimately, physically, I'd say the ogres are more powerful and they would win in this scenario, but it is almost an equal playground when it comes to these two. Thank you for watching. Check out who would win between a cool Tyranid and an orc by clicking on the screen, and check out the second channel Doronsmovies Academy for videos on real world history and science. See you next time.